So Trump's tariffs are a blessing in disguise? Coming right up. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Common Sense How You Reason. And as always, I'm going to say thank y'all for joining me today. So Nintendo is basically soon to release their successor to the Nintendo Switch, the Nintendo Switch 2, obviously. Now, Nintendo basically made a very interesting decision when it came down to their expanded memory. They decided to make express SD cards mandatory for the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, basically express cards, memory cards, these are cards that uses what's called a PCIe interface rather than a traditional UHS interface inside these cards. Now, these cards, the interface or this express cards are said to be about 10 times faster than the traditional UHS cards, but they're also 75% more expensive. And this is where the controversy came in. Now, these cards are backwards compatible with UHS. The difference is you just won't get the speed benefits. And since they're more expensive, nobody's going to buy them unless you have a device with the PCIe interface. Now, this basically format was mostly used when it came down to photography and professional DSLR cameras. So there really wasn't much need to produce many of them, and it's why they're more expensive. But Nintendo is forcing the issue here. And ever since Nintendo officially released the Switch or unveiled the Switch 2 and told us that they were going in that direction, well, these cards have been flying off the shelf. And especially the higher capacity cards, the 1 terabyte and the 512 gig, these are all on back order now, which means that now all of the companies that make memory cards, SanDisk, of course, and Kingston, Lexnar, Samsung, they're all scrambling now to produce more of these express cards to get them on the market to meet the demand for the release of the Nintendo Switch 2, which means that it's going to make the overall cost of these cards go down, because now there's a real demand for them. And as they produce more of these cards, then more people are going to start making more and more devices with this PCIe interface, which means that there's going to be even more need for cards, and the price of these cards are just going to get cheaper and cheaper. And I predict within the next 10 years or so, these are going to be the standard. So we get the benefit of having faster memory cards, and all it does is just increase the user experience. So Nintendo has basically forced the issue on this. Now, of course, there's always going to be pain, because right now you're dealing with the expense, and since now they're in high demand, we're also dealing with scalpers now, because I've seen some of these cards now, the prices just have gotten astronomical. The 1 terabyte card I've seen going for over $200 now. Like, God, these scalpers are taking advantage of this. However, more and more cards are going to come on the market, and like I said, inevitably we're going to be better off for this. Now, it's the same with Donald Trump's tariff. Now, I want to start off by saying that Donald Trump, contrary to what the mainstream or the lamestream media is telling us, Donald Trump did not start a tariff war. Okay, Donald Trump is merely decided to participate in a war that was already waging. To say that Donald Trump started the tariff war would be to say that America started World War II when we decided to enter the war after Pearl Harbor. A war that was already waging, that was already ongoing. But what Trump is doing is saying is, we're not going to sit idly by and let other people specifically China, have massive tariffs on our goods and employ the practices that they do that give them an unfair advantage. We are going to start doing the same. And it's going to have some initial pain. That means that we're not going to have all these cheaply made Chinese goods coming into our country. which means that we're going to have to make it ourselves. And at the end of the day, we're going to be better off. If we are making these things for ourselves, that means that we're employing Americans to do that. And you have Americans right now who will be making higher incomes. Well, not right now, but when we start producing these things in America, those will be Americans who are working and making a higher salary than average, than normal. So you have a situation like we had, maybe 80 years ago, in which a male who graduated from high school go right into one of these manufacturing jobs and making an excellent salary, far higher than the average of a starting high school person coming out of high school today, right now. And that person will be able to easily take care of a family on that job. And then what's going to happen is that since a lot of labor is going to flow to the manufacturing, that means that labor becomes in greater demand. So now everybody else is going to start making higher salaries because that labor is going to be a greater demand. Initially, like I said, end result is we are going to be better as a result of it, but there's going to be some pain getting there. And I think this is just the far side of Trump seeing where we were going and see where we're headed, and that the path that we were going on wasn't going to last forever anyway, because we saw the BRICS, right? This movement to move away from the dollar being the world reserve currency. And once that happened, we were going to be sunk anyway. So, like I said, this tariff allegedly war that Trump is waging is this Donald Trump being a person who's business savvy, who has business smarts, as opposed to the rest of the majority of the politicians that we have in DC that doesn't do a damn thing. And him saying, I have a foresight to see where we're going, where we need to go, and where we're going to go. If we keep going down the same path, then we need to chart a new path. That's all it is. But of course, the mainstream media is not going to tell you this. They're going to tell you anything negative that happens because of this, such as empty tankers coming in from China and the rising prices that go up. They're going to clamp onto that, and they're going to act like it's the worst thing in the world. But they're not going to tell. They're going to tell you the what, but they're never going to tell you the how or why, because that's just what leftists do. Anyway, like I said, Donald Trump's tariff. These tariffs are a blessing in disguise. You may not see it today, but eventually Americans are going to be better off if we start producing our own stuff, making our own stuff. That's just what it is, regardless of who gets in their feelings about it. Anyway, y'all, as always, until next time.